What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 401 of Hashtag AskGSM here today for Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week. Once again, big thanks to you guys for joining me last week for an awesome live episode of Hashtag AskGSM, episode 400. Crazy to think we've done 400 episodes of this show. Thanks to you guys. Without questions, I have no answers. So I appreciate you guys supporting the show, sending in your questions, joining us live last week. And because it went so well, I actually ended up going live. I didn't think I would go live again so soon after the first live stream last Wednesday, but we went live again literally 3 days later, on Saturday, coming off the news of the release of Bray Wyatt from WWE. So I went live for that for over an hour, discussing that with you guys and what's next for him. So check that out if you have a chance. But also check out episode 400 live from last Wednesday. Had a lot of fun answering your questions you sent in advance, and also the questions you guys sent in the chat during the actual show. I don't know if I could do that every week, obviously, just because I would get so off track and these episodes would be like over 2 hours every week because I had so much fun. But on the special occasion, maybe we'll try to go live more than every 100 episodes. Maybe every 10, 20 episodes, something along those lines. But it was a lot of fun. I look forward to the next one and appreciate your guys' support. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook.com /Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave your comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself, and drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Also, one cheap plug before we get going here. If you haven't already, check out my exclusive interview with NXT superstar Roderick Strong, leader of the Diamond Mine. We spoke on Monday. Interview went live on Tuesday. Also up an article for him for the highlights of the interview over on dailyddt.com, talking about his match with Bobby Fish from last night's NXT, the origins of the Diamond Mine, Undisputed Era's breakup, their futures in WWE, opponents he wants to face, Malcolm Bivens, and a lot of other cool topics. So when you get a chance, check it out. It's about a 15-minute long interview. So let's get right into your questions for this week, guys. Starting with, let's see, I think John was the first one this week from Twitter Machine. At Reborn Again, John Ritland. Check out his show, Real Honesty with John Ritland. I plug it every single week because he does great work. His first question was, so I don't know if you've seen the footage going around, but Matt Caster rapped a few questionable lines on AEW Dark this week. Basically stuff that you shouldn't joke about. So what do you think should be the punishment for his bad choice of words? So John sent this in before Dark even aired. He tweeted me this around like 6 o'clock. He DM'd me the footage, which I had already seen by that point. So Dark that aired last night on Tuesday, was filmed, I believe, after Dynamite last week. So I think the way the taping schedule works, and it might change from week to week depending on where they are and whatever, but I think they tape Elevation beforehand, and then they tape Dark afterward. I know someone that was actually there last week, and I guess they didn't stay for it because it was like fucking midnight probably by that point. So this was taped last week. Someone that was in the crowd taped Max Caster's promo, and they put it up on Twitter saying how fucking, I don't know why it didn't make the rounds before this, because again, this was taped a week ago on Wednesday, but it was making the rounds on Twitter like yesterday or 2 days ago or whatever. So I'd already seen the footage because someone posted the fan footage from the crowd of him cutting this promo. And I will say this, I'm an Acclaim fan. I've always enjoyed their work. I like the pre-match raps. The problem is that, and I said this to someone last night on Twitter, I don't think they ever screen anything they say during their pre-match promos. And as other people have said on Twitter, I think the only real thought that goes into Dark is that they know who's going to win, and they have their certain match time allotments. And that's really about it. As far as what they say on the mic, and specifically Max Caster's promos, I don't really think he has to, or at least he didn't before this promo, he had to screen anything or get approval for any lines from any agents. It's fucking Dark. I know a lot of people watch Dark. I typically shit on Dark and how many matches they have, but truth of the matter is a lot of people watch Dark. Not the majority of the AEW audience, obviously, but like routinely gets 100 to 300,000 views on YouTube every single week. Dark Elevation as well. So like a decent amount of people watch these shows. That being said, though, because it's a YouTube show, it's not airing on any network, they can obviously get away with more stuff on those shows than they could on probably Dynamite, let's say. I know obviously the pizza cutter shit was a different story. I'll get to that later. But I think they got approval from TNT about that beforehand. The Dominos incident was a whole other thing, which I'll get to later on. There's a lot of polarizing and controversial stuff to get to here on today's show, by the way, including this, because I got a lot of questions about this. And my response is simply, it was fucking disgusting. The whole promo, and I've said that, like I just said, he's done promos kind of treading that line before, kind of coming really close to going over that line, but not quite. Like I wasn't offended by, for example, the Lady Gaga dog walker line. It was, I think someone was actually hurt in that. Didn't someone get shot about that or whatever? It was a weird thing to joke about, but like he tries to be trendy and cultural and relevant and all this other stuff. And last night, well, first of all, he made a joke about something, the rape joke specifically, from a long time ago. I believe that transpired in 2006, unless it's made the rounds again for whatever reason, which I don't think it did. It was like that Duke's lacrosse line or whatever that he made in the promo last night. It was from an incident like 15 years ago. The bottom line, it doesn't matter if it was this year, it doesn't matter if it was last week, it was 15 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. It was a fucking rape joke. I mean, it's, especially in 2021, why would anyone think that's a good idea? And the excuse that, oh, people are just too sensitive, oh, you know, people are going to get upset, or oh, people are offended by anything, or whatever. Or I saw another excuse, oh, it was him just trying to get heel heat. It doesn't translate to heel heat. People don't then, in turn, boo the Acclaimed. From the show that I was watching last night, people didn't really react. For anyone that understood the references that they were making, it was like an uncomfortable, like, whoa, like, why would you say that type of thing? You know, that was the reaction that I kind of got out of it. It was just bizarre. And I don't know, it was just one of those things where, like, how the fuck does that... I mean, I know it didn't get approved beforehand. I don't work there, but I would imagine that he just kind of went out there and said it. But what I don't understand is, how does he get away with something like that? How does he say that in front of the crowd? Obviously, it didn't make air until just last night. They taped it a fucking week ago. How does not anyone in the back, Tony Khan, any of the agents, they pay attention to Dark. It's not the superstars of AEW. Like, from what I understand with superstars, there wasn't anyone in the back when they taped that show. Or like 205 Live, for example. I think the Bollywood boys talked about it recently, how when they would film that show after SmackDown, people just wouldn't give a fuck and there would be like no one in the back. I could see them getting away with more stuff on that show than they could on AEW Dark, because it's like before the show, after the show, everyone's still there from what I understand. This was filmed a week ago. How does Tony Khan not hear that line, or not hear some of the backlash from that line online, or people in the back, or whatever, and not think to, I don't know, edit it out of the show before it airs? They've since edited out of Dark. If you go on the Dark, the video on AEW's YouTube channel, it's since been removed from the channel, and they re-uploaded it without any of the entrances for that 8-man tag team match, or 6-man tag team match, whatever it was. I think it was an 8-man tag team match. But it doesn't matter. Obviously, it happened. People tweeted it out. It got taken down quite a bit. You could probably still find the video somewhere. It's out there, obviously, but a lot of people tweeted it out, and it got, like, copyrighted and, got taken down. But it doesn't matter. I mean, they obviously, by this point, by the time you're listening to this, I haven't even checked Twitter in like an hour or two, there had to have been a statement about this. I mean, AEW seems to be very good with this type of stuff. When they say stuff that's offensive or probably shouldn't have been said or whatever, they usually come out with an apology or say something about it. And this reeks to me of the Jim Cornette situation from a few years ago. He got let go, and I think some of the stuff that Max Caster even joked about last night was arguably even more offensive and more serious than the Jim Cornette stuff from a few years ago. And they were a much smaller company. And a lot less people watch NWA than AEW Dark. I'm sure it's like 10 times the amount of people that are watching this fucking show. And that also aired on YouTube. They caught a lot of flack for it. The thing is that I'm sure he doesn't actually believe in a lot of the stuff that he's saying. Like, I don't think that he is outright, making a joke about mental health, or he thinks that mental health is a joke. Maybe he does. I don't think he does, but I think he says a lot of this stuff to be funny. But it doesn't matter. Obviously, the intention is important, but you shouldn't be saying this type of shit. I had the same issue, and someone else asked about this, with the Charlotte Flair promo from Raw. And personally, myself, am I offended by anything that was said? I'm not offended per se. I just think it's incredibly stupid, because I never dealt with any of this stuff myself personally, so I can't sit here and say, oh, I'm offended or whatever. But I can understand why people would be. It's not, oh, it's a sensitivity issue. It's shit that people deal with. It's a very serious thing. It's not something to be joked about, and especially not publicly. I mean, how fucking dumb do you have to be to incorporate this type of shit into a promo? And it was just one thing after another with that rap last night. He had the rape joke in there. They made fun of the mental health thing, like I said, with Simone Biles from last week's Olympics. He made a joke about it. Charlotte Flair didn't make a joke about it per se, but she tried to relate it to her own character situation by saying she had a nervous breakdown. Get the fuck out of here. As soon as she said Simone Biles, I knew that was not going anywhere good. And like the crowd interrupted her with Becky chants, and I'm sure they weren't even paying attention to what she said. And I think Charlotte's turned into a great talker. But at the same time, she was like, hold on, I'm going somewhere with this. And it really didn't go anywhere. Like, by the end of it, I'm still thinking, okay, it was every bit as dumb as it was from the moment you said Simone Biles' name. Like, I'm not even thinking that she was going to praise her or what. No, she's a heel. She wasn't going to. She made, like, I don't want to make light of it, but she kind of, like, she said that she had her own nervous breakdown. It's not remotely the same thing. She's a fucking character. Even if she came up with that line or the writers gave her that line, I would think that Charlotte would be smart enough to say, listen, we probably shouldn't say anything about this on the show, at least not in the light that I would be discussing it in. But they went ahead and did it anyway. I blame everyone on that one. I blame everyone for the Max Caster thing. Max, obviously, himself should not have said that. And AEW, how the fuck that even made air, I have no idea. AEW, I don't know if woke is the right word, but they like to stand in their high horse a lot. I remember a couple of years ago, for literally no reason, they were like, oh, Hulk Hogan isn't invited. He isn't invited here because he's racist or whatever. I mean, that's their right. They could ban anyone they want from their shows. I think Linda Hogan may have said something, or it was just weird. Like, they got involved in the Hogan situation for literally no reason. Like, Hogan, I would say that he would never go to AEW, but then again, he went to TNA for the fucking paycheck, so you never know, I guess. But, like, they like to be like, oh, look at us, like, you know, fuck this racist and whatever, and then they'll allow jokes like that on their show. I mean, you can debate all day which one's more serious and more offensive and whatever, but still, the bottom line is that shit should not have flown. What the fuck were they even thinking? To me, it's more of like, how dumb can you possibly be to make a joke like that, or three jokes like that? There was the Simone Biles thing. It was the rape joke. It was then them making a joke about Julia Hart, which I won't repeat here. I mean, it wasn't, like, terrible, but it was just stupid. It wasn't funny. It was gross. She's, like, 19 years old. Max is, like, over 30. It was just fucking weird. And they've made, like, weird comments about her in recent weeks anyway, kind of, like, bullying her. And, again, I know they're heels. But, like, the way that they've made, like, sex jokes towards her in the Varsity Blondes, it's just fucking weird. Like, you can kind of do that. Not what they're saying, but, like, I understand what they're going for. They want to get heel heat. They want to, like, gang up on Julia for some reason, but you can do that in a more playful manner that's not dumb and also not offensive or gross. Like, there is a fine line there that you can tread and kind of be okay, but, like, the way that they kind of went over with it was just fucking weird, and I honestly don't blame anyone for being offended or disgusted or being angered by that, because my takeaway was, how the hell did this even make the air? I mean, it's been a fucking week, and Tony Khan, again, on his high horse, oh, we don't want Hogan here, oh, we gotta get, all these other people out of here, because, well, whatever. Or like the comment from a couple of months ago, which was also inexcusable. Not the comment, but the guy that was like, again, I'm sure he was just doing it to be funny or to make a joke. The guy that was making fun of Hikaru Shida, it was one of the Spanish commentators, and he was like mocking Hikaru Shida on the air, and it was just weird. Like, again, did it offend me? I mean, I'm not really, but it was one of those things. It's like, why would you even do that on air? Like, that's such a dumb thing, and I could see why people would be offended by it or find it racist or whatever, and they promptly fired the guy. Are they going to fire Max Caster? I don't think so. He'll probably just have to issue an apology. The fact that he thought it was okay, because I saw him responding to people last night, it was weird. Like, just own up to it, bro, and say that it was fucking dumb. I mean, he probably will. Again, by the time this video comes out, they probably will have taken action. I don't think they're going to get rid of him. I'm sure they will make him apologize. I'm sure the company themselves will apologize if they haven't already. I'm just surprised it's taken this long. Why didn't it happen last night? Just fucking disgusting. And it was such a dumb situation that should have never really happened. I mean, why even say that shit? I mean, it was really dumb. The whole promo was complete trash. And again, it's unfortunate because I like the Acclaimed. But I think going forward, you kind of need to screen what these guys are going to say. Because his attempts to be trendy and funny just completely backfired on him. And it was inevitable because, again, they've kind of treaded that line before, but this was just too far. John's second question, since we're a few weeks away from SummerSlam, what are your 3 favorite and least favorite pay-per-views in the event's history and why? That's a great question. I mean, there's been so many, it's hard to say like top 3, bottom 3, whatever. I've been to 2. I was there in 2015 and 2016. I don't even know if I would say either one of those were my favorites. I would probably say 2015, just because it was my first ever, not only SummerSlam, but my first just pay-per-view in general. I had been a fan since '08, and I had never been to a WWE pay-per-view. Now I've been to a whole bunch. But that was my first one, was SummerSlam 2015. It was a really fun experience, not the greatest pay-per-view overall. Coincidentally enough, I think it was the first non-WrestleMania pay-per-view that was 4 hours long. But it was a good show, so I'd probably put that in there. I loved SummerSlam '08. That was my first SummerSlam as a fan. I didn't watch it live when it happened. I watched it years later. But that was a great show. It featured Taker and Edge in the main event. Taker and Edge in a Hell in a Cell match. They had that Shawn and Jericho segment. What else did they have on that show? Punk and JBL. Nah, that wasn't that good of a match. There was some other stuff on that show I remember being really good, but I really enjoyed SummerSlam '08. The whole Hollywood theme was... Oh, Cena and Batista I thought was a great match on that show. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Obviously, SummerSlam '02 would be in that conversation. Still one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time. That and Survivor Series '02. So I would probably say, off the top of my head, '02, '08, and 2015... But then there's a lot of other SummerSlam pay-per-views that are better than the ones that I was at. Like, I love SummerSlam 2011. That was headlined by Punk and Cena 2 for the WWE title. They had Christian and Orton in a no-holds-barred match. Great match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Wade Barrett and Daniel Bryan had a really good match on that show. Kevin Nash came back, which was a cool moment at the time. I'm trying to think of the other SummerSlam shows. 2012 was like, 2013 actually would probably be in my top 3. Take 2015 out there. SummerSlam 2013 had 3 of the best matches of that year. And it was at that one pay-per-view. It was Del Rio and Christian for the World Heavyweight title. It was a great match. They had Bray Wyatt's in-ring debut, which wasn't amazing, but it was like a Ring of Fire match. It was more of a spectacle against Kane, and he won, which was good. They obviously had Punk and Lesnar, one of my favorite matches of all time, and then Cena and Bryan in the main event. So I would probably say SummerSlam's '08, 2013, and '02. And obviously I'm missing a whole bunch from the earlier years, and there has been a lot of good ones. I mean, I thought the first one was fun. That one I think had the Ultimate Warrior beating Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental Championship, a moment I always like to go back and watch because it's such a great moment in MSG. I remember watching SummerSlam 93. It was whatever show they had Taker and Gonzalez, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is this? That show was not good. I mean, that match was absolutely terrible. 95 was the drizzling shits. It was like Mabel and Diesel. King Mabel and Diesel for the WWE title, which was fucking awful. And I think the only good match in that entire show was Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels 2 for the Intercontinental Championship in a ladder match. Other than that, that show was terrible. Those two come to mind. As far as recent years, I really like, despite the circumstances with it being inside the Thunderdome and during the pandemic, it was like the first major WWE show inside the Thunderdome. I thought SummerSlam last year was a great show. I thought it was one of the better pay-per-views all year, to be completely honest with you, aside from the Rumble, which I loved. But I thought SummerSlam last year was good. SummerSlam 2019 was a pretty good show overall in Canada. 2018 it was okay. It wasn't great. I thought it was all right. 2017, I was completely bored by. I just was not a SummerSlam 2017 fan. 2016 and 2015 were just long shows. I was there for both, and I enjoyed the experience, but the main events of both shows really left a sour taste, in the mouths of many people. 2014 was a great show. I already talked about the other ones. 09 was okay. I can't think of any others that were like, oh my god, this was awful. I'm sure some of the earlier ones, and maybe 2017. 2017 was just a long fucking show. It was just a long show, not really much of note happened. That show had like fucking Baron Corbin and John Cena on it. They had a great Fatal 4-Way main event. I honestly don't remember much else about the show. I remember they had I think Natalya and Naomi. I was like, who cares? Just no one really gave a shit. Alexa Bliss and Sasha Banks had a decent match. Bray Wyatt and Finn Balor had a decent match. I don't even really remember what else was on that show. I almost went to that show. I just couldn't go for whatever reason. But yeah, those are probably some of my favorite and least favorite SummerSlam pay-per-views. And hopefully this year's is good too in Vegas, our first one back with fans in 2 years. I love SummerSlam. It's one of my favorite pay-per-views of the year. I think all four, the top three are, not Survivor Series really so much, but I love the Rumble, I love WrestleMania, I love Money in the Bank, and I love SummerSlam. Those are probably my top four favorite pay-per-views. That's not really much of a stretch to say, obviously, but I don't know. I like the vibe around SummerSlam. I like the summer feel, the end of the summer feel. They always have big matches for the most part. For the most part, for the last 10, 15 years, it's been a pretty consistently solid show. And they have at least some great matches. So, I love SummerSlam. I would love to go back. Like I said last week on Hashtag, I had an opportunity to go this year, and I'm going to All Out instead in Chicago, so I won't be there in Vegas, but maybe next year. Maybe next year. I look forward to that. His last question. So, Gage versus Jericho last week. What was that supposed to be? Because I'll tell you what it wasn't, and that's anything close to wrestling. I said this to Alexis the other day because her brother did not watch the show with us. He did not watch the show with us, and he usually does. And he asked me after the fact a couple days ago, how was that Gage and Jericho match? And I said, as a lot of other people have said, it was a spectacle. I was very interested to see what they would do with it. Did I like the match? No. I don't like that type of shit. And she said it wasn't wrestling. She said the exact same thing that you did. And I said to her, and I didn't like the match either, but I said to her, wrestling is subjective. A lot of people like that type of shit. If they're into that shit, would they call that wrestling? Maybe. I look at wrestling as more, it is a subjective thing. It really is based off what you enjoy. A guy like Jim Cornette would fucking hate, and he probably did hate a match like that. And I don't blame him. I get it, because it's all a matter of personal taste. There's certain things, like if you hated Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker from WrestleMania 25, then you're probably not a real wrestling fan. But a match like Gage and Jericho is totally tailored to people that like the hardcore shit. I don't like the hardcore shit. I'm all for a good no-holds-barred, street fight type of match, whatever. But when you introduce forks and pizza cutters and the glass tubes, that's when I kind of am like, okay, no thanks. That's when I kind of tune out and I'm like, yeah, this is garbage. Garbage wrestling is really what it is. I didn't like it. They popped a rating for it. People liked it. Would they do it again in the future? I wouldn't be surprised. A guy like Nick Gage just does not belong in a show like AEW. I thought it was cool they brought him in. And I think the bigger message to me is that it's cool that they're willing to work with people outside of the company. Nick Gage, Juventud Guerrera, people like that. I think that's awesome. Nick Gage himself, I watched The Dark Side of the Ring. The guy came across like a fucking moron. The fact they brought him in for one match, I thought was cool. The match itself, I didn't like. And the way that he just even moves around, and you take out a lot of the hardcore aspects of that match, and it's fucking terrible. It's even worse than it was. So a guy like that should never be signed by an AEW or a WWE, or, obviously not WWE, but to me, he screams indie guy. Screams indie guy, and the people that like that, God bless them. I don't think there's anything wrong with people liking that shit. For me personally, when you get to stabbing people and cutting them open and cutting their tongues and shit like that, that's just fucking gross. That to me doesn't garner heat or it's just stupid. It's not even respect to Jericho for going through with it. You're a fucking moron for putting your body through it. I just think it's completely unnecessary, personally. But that's just me. So I thought it was trash too, but for people that liked it, cool. I guess hopefully it was a one-time thing and we never get to see that type of shit again. But then again, we saw it with Moxley and Archer the week before and they used the fucking fork too in their Texas death match. So maybe it's going to be more of a regular thing than I was hoping for in AEW. But I guess time will tell. Next question from @Iwagu91. Do you see Kyle O'Reilly becoming NXT champion? I do. Obviously not the next NXT champion. I see that going to Samoa Joe at TakeOver 36. Could Kyle O'Reilly be the one to take the title off of Joe? It's possible. They're teasing a lot of matches for Joe right now. Him and Gargano. Him and Cross is obviously happening. Him and Pete Dunne. Him and Cole. Maybe. They haven't really done that recently, though, so I don't know. They probably just honestly, with the whole Adam Cole situation, which I'll get to in a moment, because he also asked about that, I feel like that's the one match they kind of backed off on teasing because they know it's probably not going to happen. My idea is that Cole is leaving after TakeOver. So if that's happening, unless his last match is with Samoa Joe, which I don't think it is, then they're probably not going to do that match, which is a shame, but, it is what it is timing-wise. So I think Kyle O'Reilly wins a TakeOver against Adam Cole. Third match, it's all over, blah, blah, blah. Joe could face all those people that he teased facing and beat them all, and then at some point, I don't know if he would go heel or Kyle O'Reilly would just have to beat him or whatever. and then he can be the one to take the belt off of Joe. Other than that, I mean, we're thinking way ahead here. Like, it could be Escobar for all we know. It could be fucking Isaiah Swerve Scott. I have no idea. Bronson Reed is probably going up, so probably not him. But it could be Kyle O'Reilly. I think he could be an NXT champion. His whole babyface push has been weird. A lot of the people, for whatever reason, at the Capitol Wrestling Center do not like Kyle O'Reilly, which is fucking weird because they were praising this guy and cheering him only like 6 months ago when he was feuding with Finn Balor and stuff. And maybe it's just because the Cole feud has gone on for too long, or maybe just because Cole is just more fun to cheer for. I don't fucking know, but people have just kind of soured on Kyle O'Reilly for whatever reason, but I think the guy's great. Could he be a world champion in the main roster? Absolutely not. I don't think. Could he be a solid mid-card champion? Yeah, I don't see why not. But in NXT, I think he is NXT champion material, personally. If they build him up a bit more, give him more wins, make him more relatable and likable, like the whole Orange Cassidy-esque character that he was doing after he beat Adam a few months ago was just fucking weird. Like, he came out with like the fedora, and I like the fact that he's showing more personality, but it was just like, it didn't really fit what we had seen from him previously. And even if that is who he is in real life, it just didn't translate well to TV. So if he can kind of work on that a little bit, I think he can be the one to beat Joe down the road. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion, let's face it, at this point, that Cross is beating, or rather losing, the NXT title to Joe. Yes, I do think Kyle O'Reilly down the road can be NXT champion. His next question: much like the last time when I asked if Roman Reigns was the MVP of the Thunderdome era, do you think that Jon Moxley was the MVP of the Dalys Place era? That's a great question. I think so. I do. You look at their Dalys Place era from, what was it, March of last year through July or June of this year. I mean, they're back at Dalys Place tonight. But yeah, I mean, Jon Moxley was the champion for most of that period. Omega was also on TV, but I just feel like a lot of people, not a lot of people, but his reign has been kind of like polarizing. Like, some people haven't liked it, some people have really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed Omega's reign overall. I could see why some people haven't. Moxley was wrestling on the show almost every single week. I'm not even saying Omega should be, because it's different for heels, but Moxley was wrestling almost every other week. He was defending the championship against a variety of people. He had great matches on TV with Eddie Kingston. Darby Allin I enjoyed his matches with. Jake Hager really not so much, but they tried something different in the empty arena match that they had in April of last year at the very beginning of the pandemic. He and Brody Lee had a great match at Double or Nothing. Him and MJF had a great match at the All Out pay-per-view. He had a lot of great matches, especially on the show itself as well. So yeah, I think Jon Moxley, it's safe to say, was the MVP of the Thunderdome era. Hikaru Shida as well. She doesn't get a lot of credit because she wasn't on TV a whole lot towards the end of her reign, and she hasn't been on TV at all since she dropped the championship. She's been on Dark a bunch of times, but that's not Dynamite. So if you don't watch Dark, you would never even know that she's still there. But I think Shida as well was a great MVP for them. She put on a lot of good matches. She didn't have a ton of defenses, and she never really had consistent like character work. And she can talk too. I mean, she got a promo a couple months ago, and we know that she could speak English fairly well, so it's not like she can't talk. But I thought she had a great reign as well for over a year. She kind of held down that division. And Britt Baker, honestly, probably now that I think about it, Britt Baker, even more so than Moxley, was the MVP of the Thunderdome, of the Dalys Place era for AEW. I mean, she didn't have nearly as many standout matches as Moxley or Shida. Like even the big swole, what was the tooth and nail match? That was just kind of trash, to be honest with you. But like her promos really carried a lot of those Dynamites. She had an entertaining feud with Big Swole. She ended up taking the belt from Shida in Dalys Place at Double or Nothing. They had a good match there. She had some good matches. I mean, obviously, she and Thunder Rosa had a great feud, and their unsanctioned match was at Dalys Place back in March. One of the best matches for that company all year. So I'm going to say Britt Baker. Britt Baker, even more so than Moxley, I would say was the MVP of that Dalys Place era that kind of allowed her to really get over in front of these crowds. And she was over even before COVID. But now that they're back in front of full crowd, she is 10 times more over, I would say, even than she was in March or February of last year. Speaking of Britt Baker, her significant other, next question from @Iwagu91. Do you want Adam Cole, baby, to resign with the WWE to join the main roster after his feud with Kyle O'Reilly ends? And, unlikely as that is, would you like to see their feud culminate inside Hell in a Cell? I'll mention the Hell in a Cell part first and then get to the rest of the Cole question. Hell in a Cell, yes. So I think the whole O'Reilly and Cole feud has been ass-backwards booking. There's no fucking way that we get a third match with these guys at TakeOver, which we are getting. But there's no way that we get a third match and there's not a stipulation attached to it. what I hate with this feud, in that AEW has done this as well, the main roster has done this as well, NXT itself has done this as well. They'll start with like a big stipulation match and work their way backward to a standard singles match. The main roster did it last year with Orton and Edge. They had a last man standing match at WrestleMania. If you knew the feud was going to fucking continue, then why did you do a regular match for the greatest match ever, which it wasn't, but it was a good match, between those same two guys at Backlash a few months later? I didn't understand that whatsoever. I know AEW has done it before. I just don't get it when they do shit like that. Like with Omega and Moxley. They started with like the lights out match, and they worked their way backwards towards just a regular standard singles match. They do that a lot. They do it a lot. And I don't understand that. Every company does it a lot. Specifically AEW and WWE and NXT. I hate when they do that. O'Reilly and Cole, they did an unsanctioned match at TakeOver, and they had a regular singles match at the next TakeOver at Great American Bash. What the fuck? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, with that being said, I've loved the idea of doing Hell in a Cell in NXT, dating back to Ciampa and Gargano. They never had a chance to have one, which I don't think they would have anyway. If they had their match at TakeOver New York, I don't think it was going to be Hell in a Cell. I always think it would have been... It was probably always meant to be 2 out of 3 falls, and they just plugged Cole in there when Ciampa got hurt. The thing is that I don't think you can do it inside the Capitol Wrestling Center. I'm pretty sure they've done cage matches inside the Capitol Wrestling Center. They did, because they did one with Gargano and Bronson Reed, but I don't know. Hell in a Cell in that fucking arena, just to me, I just don't like that. They need to get out of their period, not even because of that, but because the Capitol Wrestling Center is so overexposed, and it screams Bush League, and I was discussing with RJ earlier over DM, but this card has the potential to be one of the best all year. He said that, and I completely agree. The problem with it, as I told him, is that it's going to be happening in a very small-ass arena with like a fucking 100 people. And a lot of these people either don't react, or it's not a good environment. It reminded me of Full Sail at certain points when they would just like sit on their phones when fucking Austin Aries would come out. Like, what the fuck is this? The Impact Zone 10 years ago when they would invite people that went to Universal Studios to come watch wrestling? Like, that's what it reminded me of. That's what this reminds me of. Like, fucking react. They got to either go back to Full Sail. I mean, they're not going to put tickets on sale for a show that's coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, that window is over, I think, and they're just going to have to do it. I mean, I guess they could. I mean, AEW did that with Rampage, but WWE doesn't typically work like that, and it looks like they're just going to have it at the Capitol Wrestling Center, which is complete bullshit. I don't know what the protocol is there. Maybe their relationship with Full Sail is over. I mean, I don't know. If WWE's going on the road and they're doing all the shit with them for the next couple of months, I don't see why NXT is any different. So that's really disappointing. So I don't see it happening inside Hell in the Cell. I think it should. It would be cool if it did. I don't see them doing that, though. I think that's... They're probably either going to have another unsanctioned match, which is dumb, or they're going to have, I mean, more accurately, probably a last man standing match, like Gargano and Ciampa had a time or two. They had that a few times. I think they actually, maybe only once, but anyway. They'll probably do like a last man standing match or something along those lines, I would have to imagine. As far as Cole going to the main roster, I said this even before the news broke earlier this week. It's a very interesting time for his contract to be up. Now, reportedly, it was supposed to be up after Great American Bash. He agreed to stay through SummerSlam weekend, which is TakeOver. So, when I hear that, and that could be for a variety of reasons, but me personally, the first thing I think of when I hear that is that, okay, he agreed to stay, not an extra 6 months, but an extra 6 weeks, because they wanted to finish out the feud with O'Reilly winning the first, him winning the second, and then O'Reilly winning the third match. Because, like, if they do a second match at Great American Bash and O'Reilly wins again, I mean, they could have done that, but I think it makes more sense. Booking 101, you split wins and then build to a rubber match at the TakeOver. And I've always said, I said this back in fucking February, the feud would... I thought it would happen in April, but they continued the feud for another 2 more matches. I thought it would just be over there. I always said the endgame for this feud should be loser leaves town with Cole winning, or Cole losing, rather. I mean, O'Reilly's also been in NXT for 4 years, the same amount of time as Cole. But Cole has literally done everything. I mean, O'Reilly has not held the singles championship there yet. He's gone for the NXT championship a few times, but he's only really recently broke out on his own. He was doing the tag team thing for the longest time. So with O'Reilly, I think he can stay there for an extra year and be champion or do the North American thing or whatever. Even go after the Cruiserweight Championship. I mean, I don't really want to see that, but it's possible. With Cole, he's done everything. I mean, he's been NXT champion, Twice? Has he been champion twice? No, I think it was just once. I thought, no, he would be a 2-time champion if he ever got the belt back, which he's not. But he's been the North American champion. He was tag team champion, kind of. He was a Triple Crown champion, main event to TakeOver a million times. He's faced everyone. It's time for him to move on. So, with that being said, it's either the main roster or he leaves entirely. I think, honestly, at this point, if you asked me 6 months ago, I would say, main roster, obviously. A guy like Cole, though, it's concerning, I would say, if a guy like him wants to leave. Because to me, he screams WWE guy. I've always said this, but when you hear him do media or him promote the company, he screams a guy that WWE would want on the main roster, not to push per se, but to put in the media and have him promote and do the tours and all this other shit. He has that marketable face and whatever. But the problem with a guy like Cole is that he does not have size on his side. Karrion Kross does. And Road Dogg even made that comment, if Road Dogg or if Adam Cole was Karrion Kross' size, he would be Universal Champion right now. The problem is that Karrion Kross has the size, and I think he's a very good performer. They called him up to do absolutely fucking nothing. He's lost 2 matches of the last 3 that he's had on Raw. That does not tell me that he's going to be the WWE Champion in the year. Maybe he will. That tells me that they don't see him as a big star. That NXT did. That the same star that was undefeated for a year and a half or whatever. That tells me that they look at him as an undercard guy or as a mid-card guy at best. If Karrion Kross is getting booked that way, I would fucking fear for Adam Cole. For a guy like him, why would he even move up? Honestly, why would he even go to Raw or SmackDown if Kross isn't getting booked properly? Why the fuck would anyone from that show, specifically with the men, because the women have more of a chance to succeed. It's a smaller division. Tegan, Shotzi, and Tony have only been there for a few weeks, but so far it's been fine. They have more potential to succeed, I think. With the men, you can get lost in the shuffle very quickly. And also, Bianca's done well for herself. Rhea Ripley, for the most part, has done well. The men is really who I fear for. And people just get called up and completely flounder. Look no further than EC3 or a guy like Bobby Roode, which they called up to do, again, absolutely nothing. And these people were top-tier talent in NXT. So, with that being said, I think he should leave. I always said, him going to AEW, I feel like he would get lost in the shuffle over there. But at least he would have more of a chance to succeed than he would in WWE. On the main roster, he's fucking doomed. He might be US IC title, fodder, mid-card fodder, but he's definitely not going to be pushed towards the main event. Unless Vince McMahon wakes up one day and says, I want Adam Cole on the main roster tomorrow to have him beat, the fucking Bobby Lashley for the WWE title, or Roman Reigns. Especially with those 2 guys, he's doomed. With those 2 guys on top, Adam Cole is not getting a sniff towards the main event scene, which is where he belongs. So the more that time passes and the more reports that I hear about his contract and stuff like that, I'm more inclined to believe that he's gone. And that he's probably going to a company like AEW where his girlfriend works and he's had a good relationship with people there, not only just previously before AEW, but he's visited their shows and he knows Tony Khan, I'm sure. And I'm sure they would love to have Adam Cole in their company. So, yeah, it's unfortunate because I really would love to see him on Raw and SmackDown. I always wanted to see Undisputed Era on Raw or SmackDown feuding with the New Day or something like that. But the problem is that it's just not going to happen. They're not going to book those guys properly. They will be losers. Him specifically, if Cole can't succeed, none of those guys are going to get a fucking sniff on the main roster. So he might as well go while his stock is still super high. He could still leave Raw and SmackDown like Aleister Black and be a big star. Aleister Black gave it a shot. It didn't work out and he left. Cole could do the same thing, but how long is that contract going to be? He can go to the main roster and it doesn't work out, but if he just resigned this month, then he's there for another 5 years and he's fucked. Or unless they release him before then, which is also possible. So, honestly, I'm more inclined to believe that he's on his way out. That's what I'm starting to think. At @N_N_Co 1991, what are your thoughts on the releases of Bray Wyatt and Ric Flair this week and where they will go next? AEW, Impact, or NWA? I got a good chuckle out of the NWA. They couldn't even afford to pay Ric Flair's fucking bar tab, let alone whatever he would want from them. And Ric Flair went on the record in saying that he left because they just didn't see eye to eye on many business opportunities, which makes sense. He does a lot of sponsorships, and he's in those car commercials I see on Ring of Honor TV all the time. It plays in between the Dynamite commercials. I don't think he's going to sign anywhere. He was very sour towards Impact, and the only reason he went there was for a fucking paycheck. That was the literal only reason he was there. He was there for all of 2 years, barely even that. And then he left, and he's kind of like talked poorly about his Impact run. I'm sure they treated him well, but he just does not see them as competition at all. So I think if anything, he would go to AEW and make a few appearances over there, given how close he is with Jim Ross and Sting and people like that. So I could see him doing some stuff with AEW. As an on-air manager at this point, 72-year-old Ric Flair just probably wouldn't work. But for an occasional appearance, reunite the Four Horsemen, I don't see why not, personally. With Bray Wyatt, I already went into great detail about this last week. It makes no sense to me. The whole budget cut thing is complete bullshit. They saw him as expendable. I don't agree with Ronda Rousey tweet. I thought that was complete garbage what she said. It's not the fans' fault. It's the company's fault 100%. But as far as what he's got going on next, I don't know. It honestly is entirely dependent on whether he wants to continue to pursue wrestling or not. He could just very easily go into acting or do something like that. So, if anything, I see him going to AEW. I don't see him going to Impact or Ring of Honor. Those are way too small platforms for Bray Wyatt, I would think. It's AEW or nothing, I think, or just acting or doing something else entirely. But I think he should continue wrestling, give it a real, give his creativity and shit like that a real shot in AEW. So, I hate to say everyone should go to AEW, but these are big stars. I'm not saying Tony Nese should go to AEW or the fucking Bollywood Boys or August Gray. Who cares? But if they make a play for a guy like him, I'm not even saying Buddy Murphy should go there. But if they pursue their biggest stars that I think could make a difference for AEW, Bray Wyatt would be one of them. And there's a lot of history there with a lot of people that are there or on their way in. So yeah, I think Bray Wyatt in AEW would be pretty cool. Bray Windham, if they want to call him that, or if he wants to go by that, I think that'd be fucking sick. What are your thoughts on the Nick Gage Domino's Pizza incident on last week's Dynamite? I thought it was hilarious when they did the match and they showed the Domino's commercial. I thought that was amazing. WWE's involvement with the whole thing and the sponsors and getting the reporters in on it was just fucking weird. I tend to believe there is some semblance of truth to that. But yeah, Domino's, as far as I know, has not pulled any ads on Dynamite. I think we'll probably see them during Dynamite tonight. So that probably isn't really changing anything. I think the whole Nick Gage match was garbage, but the Domino's Pizza thing was just hilarious. I got a good laugh out of it. That's really about it. And I don't really think it's going to affect anything for AEW. Specifically, if they're not going to continue to do that shit either. If they're done doing the hardcore death wrestling shit, which they should be, then I don't really see what the problem is. But it was a pretty funny story, though. He asked about the Charlotte Flair, Simone Biles thing, and he said, as someone who was born with mental health, I find that promo offensive and sensitive. I already spoke about this earlier. It was fucking stupid. The whole thing with Charlotte, again, I can't even say it was slightly better than the Max Caster promo, because she shouldn't have gone there either. Whether it was her idea or the writer's idea, which is what I probably believe, it was just fucking dumb. It was dumb. It was a real situation. There's certain subjects you just shouldn't touch, and I think that's one of them. I think Charlotte, like I said earlier, has turned into a great talker, and the way that she shut down the Becky chance was amazing. But the Simone Biles thing was just fucking stupid, and if you're, people are so sensitive, just shut the fuck up. Honestly, no one wants that Attitude Era bullshit back with stuff like that. They shouldn't have done it 20 years ago, and they shouldn't be doing it now. So, I thought it was just, again, I like the promo overall, but as soon as I heard her say Simone's name, I'm like, yeah, this is not going anywhere good at all. This is not good, so, yeah, no, just take that trash out of your promos, please. It's just not necessary. It's really just a way to get cheap heat and to play off of something relevant. That's really all it is. So, let's not do that. Let's try to be better and be better heels by not referencing shit that would instantly draw heat when you can just do other shit instead. At Jeremy8911, with Bray Wyatt being released, do you see him going to AEW, Impact, MLW, back to WWE, or leaving wrestling entirely? I think he would be brain dead to go back to WWE. A guy like Braun, honestly, I don't see him doing well anywhere else except WWE. So if he were to go back, or Samoa Joe went back under the NXT banner, I'm fine with that. Bray Wyatt, he wouldn't do well in NXT, for one, I don't think. It just doesn't fit that. Him in the fucking Capitol Wrestling Center, no thanks. But, I don't know. I don't think any other company would fit him as well as AEW. I think AEW is the biggest platform. I know MLW does kind of some stuff similar to the cinematic shit, and Impact does that too. But they're just not big platforms. They're just not big companies, and he's a big, big star. He's got to go to AEW. If he continues wrestling, then I think, he could leave wrestling entirely and do other shit or acting, which I think he should go to AEW and act. I think he should do both. I think he would thrive in both areas. If he will continue wrestling, I think AEW would be a likely destination. He has a lot of friends there. The Brody connection as well before he passed. I'm sure he would be welcomed with open arms if they were to offer him a deal there. The Wrestler Guy from Twitter, what match do you believe hurt Bray Wyatt's career the most? Versus Cena at WrestleMania 30, versus Taker at WrestleMania 31, versus Orton at WrestleMania 33, all WrestleMania matches, or versus Goldberg at Super Showdown 2020. I mean, this isn't even a question to me. It's versus Cena at WrestleMania 30. I tweeted this out the other day. That is the only wrestling hill I am willing to die on. That Cena beating Wyatt at WrestleMania 30 was the dumbest decision they could have made. I said it then. I said it the next year. I say it now. That is where his push went downhill. And there were a lot of mistakes they made with the Bray Wyatt character. The Rollins thing at Hell in a Cell 2019 was awful. The Goldberg loss was awful. That was basically the final nail in the coffin of the career of Bray Wyatt, basically. The Orton match this year was fucking dumb. The Taker loss didn't really bother me. That I think is the least offensive. The Orton 33 loss, the match was terrible, and he should not have lost. But I think what started it all was WrestleMania 30. I think had he won that match and won maybe not even won the feud, but at least won at WrestleMania, because that's the match that people will remember, not Extreme Rules or Payback or whatever. I honestly think he'd be more of a main event player in the company than he was, and the character would have done better. But they had Cena beat him, and that was it. So I thought that was incredibly stupid. His next question, Vince says he doesn't consider AEW competition, whether that's how he truly feels or not. But when do you think is the time that where Vince will think AEW is actually a problem for WWE? Honestly, I think if they start getting ratings that are higher than theirs, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon, if at all, then I think they would see AEW as a real threat. I mean, for as great as the show is, and they're doing really good numbers by their standards, it's still lower than Raw. I honestly don't think Dynamite's numbers are going to reach 1.5 million viewership. I think Raw's is just going to get lower. I think Raw's numbers will get so low that they are literally behind Dynamite. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't know what their base is for how low they're actually going to go. Is it 1 million? Is it 1.5? Is it 1.3? I don't know. It used to be 2. They'd be lucky if they even got 2 million viewers nowadays. So I don't really know. I think until the ratings get high enough, they would think of them as a threat. Otherwise, they're dominating them in every other field as far as financially and just being a global empire. Yeah, they have a lot of great talent, and they wouldn't want those talent to go to AEW for the most part, I would assume. I mean, at this point, I don't really think they care if they're firing Bray Wyatt and people like that or whatever, not making a bigger play for Daniel Bryan. But yeah, I think until the ratings are higher than WWE's, that's to me really going to be the turning point if that ever happens, which I don't think it will, but hey, you never know. Stranger things have happened. So we'll see, but I think that's really the biggest thing. Because WWE financially, unless there's some sort of massive scandal or something that puts them out of business or they lose a lot of money on, I don't think they're going anywhere. The ratings are one thing, and a lot of their TV deals make up their biggest. I mean, that's the thing. If the ratings get low enough, and USA Network and Fox don't want them anymore when their deals are up in a few years, that's a problem. That's a problem. So that could be the real turning point in a few years, but we won't know anytime soon, I don't think. He said, what's your favorite SummerSlam match of all time? I got to go Punk and Brock. I mean, there's a lot of great ones, but I got to go Punk and Brock or Cena and Styles. Actually, you know what? It'd probably be Cena and Styles because I was there for that one at SummerSlam 2016. Styles winning clean, to me, really made him a star, in my opinion. So Punk and Brock would be a very close second from 2013, but I think it's got to be Cena and Styles from 2016 SummerSlam. Last couple of questions at Misdemeanor6. Now that Stu Grayson is now getting more praise, and rightfully so, from the AEW commentators, do you see him and Evil Uno, who is really underrated, they say, getting the tag team titles sooner rather than later? I don't. I think the Young Bucks are champions now. I think they should lose them to Santana and Ortiz. I think that should be the tag team that take the titles ultimately, and then they can move on from there. So, yeah, that's what I'm expecting. And I don't think at that point, if Santana Ortiz win them in New York City or whatever, I don't think they're going to, get the titles anytime soon, the Dark Order, that is. So they probably will be champions at some point. I completely agree. I think Stu Grayson is great. Evil Uno is fine as well as a tag team. They're very underrated, in my opinion. I agree. But I don't think they're getting those tag titles anytime soon, nor should they. I think Santana Ortiz get the next run, and they should hold that gold for a while as well. Who do you think is underrated in AEW? And this is the final question. And maybe needs more focus on. Layla Hirsch springs to my mind. The same goes with the two guys in Varsity Blondes. I'm surprised Big Swole doesn't get more spotlight. I'm not the biggest Big Swole fan at all, but I'm surprised that she hasn't been on Dynamite at all. Penelope Ford needs more seasoning, but I think she has potential. They could be doing more with her. Really, a lot of the women, to be honest with you. Sheeta, they have not used on TV since Dynamite, which is kind of surprising. Layla Hirsch, I don't know if she's underrated. She just kind of got there. I like Layla Hirsch a lot. With more seasoning, I think she could be a real star. And Varsity Blondes, not underrated. I mean, they're the fucking number one in the rankings. And they're on Dynamite most of the time, I would say, too. So, I don't know if they're underrated, but they are very good. I was going to say Santana Ortiz, but they've been kind of getting used more lately, which is good. Miro hasn't been on the show at all in the last month, but he is the TNT champion, so he's not, like, underutilized. But those are the names that come to mind. Thankfully, AEW, to me, as big as their roster is, and even with Rampage coming up in a few weeks, they don't have a lot of, like, oh, man, they're not doing shit with this guy, or, like, they're burying this guy. They don't have a whole lot of that. There are obviously cases of that, but there aren't a lot of cases of that, which is good. So that is one thing they're doing right, which I appreciate. But that's going to do it, guys, for episode 401 of Hashtag AskGSM here today for August 4th, 2021. Appreciate you guys checking into the show. I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys supporting the show and all this other stuff. So be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And check out that Roderick Strong interview that went live yesterday here on the channel as well, and an article form over on dailyddt.com. Be sure to send in your questions for next week through Facebook, Twitter, and here on YouTube, with all the avenues I said earlier, by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag SGSM, Facebook, facebook.com, backslash Graham.GSM.Matthews on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, and in the comment section down below on this very video to get your question included in next week's edition. So with all that being said, guys, have an awesome rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.